Elon's in the news again, doing all kinds of things from Tesla launching things and, on the weekends now dealing with brains. No big deal. So he founded Neuralink in 2017, and now through Neuralink, he's basically wants to turn our brains into computers through tiny implants, through for a revolutionary brain control interface. So basically, his reasoning is that computers are growing more and more intelligent all the time.
Faster and faster,
Um,
smarter and smarter.
right. So we got to keep up with them. And if we don't, they could potentially turn against us. So he wants to make us basically a computer. And he's saying that, well, we use computers all the time from just our phone to like an actual computer. So why not make it more efficient and make it faster by just sticking it inside your head?
Well, you're not technically sticking a computer in your head. You're sticking a neural interface onto your into your brain, more or less. It's an implant that these threads
Yeah, it's
will
inside.
be going into your skull
Hmm.
through. I believe it's like 8 small holes or something like that.
No,
And
it's two small holes. They're super tiny, like eight
yeah,
millimeters or
they're
something
they're,
like
they're
that.
ridiculously tiny.
And the
And
wires themselves are this or the width of like one human hair. So
yes,
very small.
and these wires will interface with your brain, and that'll allow your brain to interface with computers, phones, and other technology. Basically, you'd be able to just link yourself up to your computer and imagine playing a game at the speed of thought. That's an interesting idea, now isn't it?
Yeah, well, 'cause when you see people play it now, how fast they can play, but now you're eliminating you having to do something. You just think it and it happens.
Yes.
So that's
Cause
pretty nutty.
like it
Okay, if you there's a problem with that though. You could get distracted very easily. Your mind could just think about
Well, what if there was
uh,
there was a filter, like filtering out game commands versus non-game commands? Like, what if you could find a way, like, if you could set that up?
You should tweet that to Elon. I'm sure he's got an answer.
uh,
But I mean,
but
there's a number of things like what ifs. I mean, the biggest thing for I'm sure a lot of people is if you can hack any computer now, you can probably hack something that's attached to your brain. So what happens then?
are we headed to for Dune or Terminator? My opinion, both.
A little bit of each, a little bit of variation. Okay, so yeah, so that's his goal, his vision, and he's working on it currently with his team, but it is a very, I guess, like this gray area of morality because he's testing on different types of animals. So it's cool, but then when you bring that into it, it's like, so
Like he
he's
himself said, let's address the monkey in
the
the room, or the
monkey, yeah, the monkey in the room. So they so far have an 87, I believe it was, success rate, and they've successfully had a rat control a computer and a monkey as well. So now, because animals' brains and human brains are totally different, they want to see if this is truly successful and hopefully get approval from the FDA to get human trials going, which is very interesting. I don't know that I would sign up for such a thing. Would you guys?
probably not the first round, probably like the fifth or sixth round after
Let
they work
someone
out most
test it out,
after
like
they work out some more of the
watch
bugs.
them apart. Yeah, get some updates. It's definitely a very interesting concept and just a crazy thing to think about that that could be a normality for our future.
In my
Um,
opinion, like I've said it before, and like one of my favorite sci-fi world universes is Ghost in the Shell. Like I'm not sure if you guys know what Ghost in the Shell is in
yeah,
general.
yeah.
Like that type of reality is like what I would like to see us transition into eventually, where we're able
Mhm.
to like transfer our minds into cybernetic
yeah.
bodies and stuff like that
There's
eventually, and it's
just to
It
say, most
could be.
cyberpunk settings are very uncomfortable. I wouldn't want to live in any cyberpunk setting. You'd be like a
Honestly, like Ghost in the Shell, yeah, I mean, it has its problems. Every world does, whether it be a modern setting, a fantasy setting, or a cyberpunk setting, or a sci-fi, general sci-fi setting. But I'd honestly say it's one of the least bleak cyberpunk settings I've seen.
every cyberpunk setting. There's some kind of like authoritarian police state going on. Like even in like set places that you would think would be like free,
Honestly,
you know,
not really the
tourist
case in Ghost in the Shell. That's one of the reasons I like it. Like I said, it's one of the least dystopian cyberpunk societies that I've seen.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
there's good and bad with everything.
and it's a
So
combination. And the Matrix got a lot of their ideas from cyberpunk, like the whole plugging into the internet and stuff like that, and having a digital consciousness that you could float around in the internet and stuff, and your computer, and having like the interfaces scroll past your eyes and stuff like that. And it's I find it intriguing, and just like, yeah, I'd be down for that. I'd be down for putting my brain in a box and sticking it into an android. Why the fuck not?
why not?
Like, live probably semi forever, at least until, well, that is one thing that, though, like, your brain eventually just starts to like give out after a while. Like, you're still biological inside that metal body of yours, so eventually
Right.
your brain does die, does, like, you go brain dead essentially, because it's just wore out. It's done. Your brain's had enough. But
That's nuts.
it, at the same time, you live significantly longer than you would otherwise, because I mean, you're in a metal body and all that, you know.
Yeah. Huh. But I guess we'll
You know,
see. I
that
don't
would
know.
be that technology would be so exclusive. I mean, like just the wealthy, like just like the billionaire class of people would have access to that shit.
Initially, yeah, and I'm sure that's how it was in Ghost in the Shell's universe. But it seems to me like there's a lot of people in that universe that aren't super rich that have these cybernetic bodies. And
Yeah. Well, I think that's like with any technology. Like when computers first came out, not everyone had them, and then now most
Uh,
everyone has them.
and
the
there's
thing is,
also, go on.
it there's like a natural order of things where people they're born, they live, and people have been living longer and longer. Now the average age it's like, you know, like 80 more or less.
75 to 85 depending on region, temperature, climate, etc., etc.
Gender, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Politics.
if people keep reproducing at the rate that they're doing now, you know, people keep if like how many billions of people can Earth sustain? Especially if, and the thing is, when people get to be that old and your freaking brain is like in a robot body, you know, or something, you're not breeding anymore. You know, that is off the shelf. That is off the table. I mean,
Not
but
breeding, but I will say,
existing.
based off the show, you can still have sex. There's people that like have still do that, and there, like I said, there are trade-offs to having this cybernetic body. Like, you don't need to eat, but at the same time, though, it's so ingrained in you, you continue to eat anyway, but you can't taste it, and taste it though.
Huh.
So it's a weird trade-off. Like, you don't need to eat, but you continue to eat because that's what you're used to, but you don't taste anything when you eat. So it's like, at that point, I would probably stop
I don't
eating,
think I would eat. Yeah.
because there would be no point, because like, what's the
Yeah.
point of eating? I mean, other than give you nutrition and energy and stuff like that, which it no longer does, for the taste, the flavors, the experience, which you can no longer taste or experience. So at that point, it's just like, why bother eating? Sleep would also become optional. If anything, it would be mainly for you're giving rest to your brain.
Okay. This is what I was kind of getting at. The way that things work now, if people on average were living to be 110, okay, if that was the new normal in maybe 50 years, maybe potentially something like that, if that happens,
if we all don't get scorched,
what does that mean for things like Social Security, stuff like that? Like, I don't think Social Security as it stands right now could be able to, if people are retiring when they're even 70, people surviving, people getting Social Security for the next 40 years of their life.
Yeah, well, we're already questioning that system as it stands now, let alone in that scenario. I don't think it would have to be totally reformulated.
Yeah, it would. It just, people living longer, it unnaturally longer, it could create more problems. And you're going to see a lot of these benefits of this technology. It's going to stay like at the top with like the 1%, and there's going to be laws where it's like they're going to find ways where it's like not everyone can have access to this. Like it's going to be kind of cruel like that. I mean, already the healthcare system in the United States is pretty fucking cool, and it's just going to get like
it's pretty shitty
as time goes by.
And then back to what you were saying, how people are living longer, so now your older people are dependent upon healthcare and using up a bunch of money to pay for healthcare every month because they're the ones using it, but yet they don't have a bunch of money, so it's like, well, they're just fucked.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about what's going on, and like again, using Ghost in the Shell as a reference, like what healthcare? You wouldn't need healthcare. That's another thing.
in that
some kind of maintenance.
I mean, maybe like an annual maintenance.
Change. You got an oil change.
Oiler on up here.
Maybe like annual maintenance or something like that, but or unless you're actually doing something dangerous, like if you're a police officer or something like that, your arm gets blown off. You need a new arm. Like you're not going. Most people generally aren't going to need healthcare anymore because, aside from anything that affects the brain, which honestly they probably wouldn't be able to catch after they got put into the brain box, the brain case anyway, like there's nothing really biological that would be able to like
I think we're just saying it's the lead up to this like world. So like there would still be a healthcare, it would still be shitty scenario, it would still at some point be only for like the wealthy, but like once it's a whole mass thing, and being in like your scenario that you're saying, then yeah, totally. But that weird transition phase would just be a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there could be like riots and rebellions and like all kinds of crazy shit going on, like with trying to, people grasping to live longer when they know that technology exists, and if they can't have access to it, some of them would rather die fighting for it than live out their normal life. It's going to create issues like that.
Yeah. Or like those people who, I mean, if you can afford it, but you're not necessarily ethical, and now like you don't have a real body, so you can do whatever you want, you don't feel pain, and I don't know, if I shot you, it wouldn't matter. It's just weird.
I mean, as things stand now, if the way things are going with our planet, if our planet is like totally fucked over the next 100 years, the wealthiest people in the world, they're gonna get on spaceships and like just go off into fucking space and leave everything else behind.
That's Elon Musk's true plan.
He's totally gonna launch himself in a Tesla onto Mars. Like, later, losers. Like, fuck, dude.
He's just gonna
And-
evacuate the 1% on Starship.
And I honestly think, when I think about all the immoral, like, consequences of, modern implementations of capitalism, people justify all the rapacious practices that go with that. With, well, I'm just getting my money for my family, so in the future we can get on one of those fucking lifeboats. It's survival, because we can't stop this shit. So we're just, I'm acquiring as much wealth and power as I can now, so we can get on one of those lifeboats. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah. I hate thinking about that. I think that's kind of the reality we're faced with, though, in the future.
I mean, it is
Something
sort of like in any scale that you look at it, whether it's a massive scale, like we're talking about getting on a fucking spaceship and going to Mars, or even just like in our normal everyday living situation, where it's like, if you're not accumulating this wealth and this money, like we just said, when you're old, you're fucked. Like, our system isn't gonna, it's gonna collapse. So if you can't rely on yourself, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know what we are gonna do.
What we know today, there is some kind of balance, right? But like, when that technology starts getting out and people know about it, it's gonna cause a lot of people are gonna get jealous, like really jealous, like.
I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But honestly, honestly, that's the road I would personally like to see.
Jealous, but desperate and jealous. The desperation is what's really gonna cause issues.
I would like we've been talking about. I'd personally not mind seeing us go down like the Ghost in the Shell route. In my personal opinion.
I want
cybernetic bodies, all that stuff, fun stuff.
I want us to go down the Pokemon route. I want to live in a Pokemon world. I want the technology to catch little animals and fight other little animals.
Oh, you can do that now.
Animals.
You could do that now if you want, but you're probably gonna get arrested.
Yeah, please don't. Please.